seeing interactions and seeing possibilities where before we saw nothing. And that's pretty cool because then that lets us build a whole new life around magic. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Orphic. My name is Alyssa Sokol. I'm an astrophysicist. I have my PhD, and I'm interested in understanding the consciousness of the universe. I believe that all celestial bodies are infused with souls and have soul contracts. They're playing out their own stories, and my motivation in this lifetime is really to help us kind of embody that consciousness and embody the frequency of the cosmos into our lives and have us understand it more than just us simply being a small part of it, you know? So that's what I'm doing here. And on my Instagram, please follow me there at interdimensional.astrophysics. Hey.
Hey, I'm Mikayla. On Instagram as Mariposa Moonchild, and I work with energy medicine through energy medicine attunement and shadow alchemy. And through that, really diving into that unconditional love, that unconditional compassion, that unconditional acceptance for self, where the real healing really comes from. So with shadow alchemy, it's like doing shadow work. We're taking, that mud that may be in us and like alchemizing that into gold. So like digging deep into ourselves, digging deep into our wounds, and finding those rocks or those pieces of dirt and alchemizing them into pure liquid gold, which we have the capacity to do, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now more than ever, with the frequencies that are pouring in at this time to assist us. So when it comes to shadow work, I think people think that it sounds kind of scary and dark and like it's like really hard work. And honestly, it's just shadow work is just an opportunity to love ourselves deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing us the parts of ourselves that are asking for our attention and truly just want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So shadow work is the opportunity to love ourselves deeper, which is really doing the healing work,
Yeah. And when you put it like that, isn't that so liberating to just put it like that it's just loving yourself deeper? It's just doesn't sound as scary, I would say. Sounds like a gentle process, even though can be intense a little.
Yeah, it gets to be really gentle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot less of like doing the things and being and learning to embody learning to embody the feelings, our desires, and feeling the feelings, and offering ourselves more love into these spaces, and pieces of it can be too cracking ourselves a little bit. I'm sure most of us have had experiences like that before in our life where it feels like we're just kind of just being cracked open.
Yep.
Like, we finally have to release control and we are cracked open. But from this cracked open place, the light begins to shine in through. And that's the interesting thing with shadow work, right? Because the light actually casts the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
For us to be able to go in that space. So,
yep. Yeah. Okay. So if you are new here, we like to start each episode with a little bit of deep breathing and grounding in, kind of just like a mini meditation of just breathing. So Mikayla's going to lead that off, and just with the intention of really just getting present. So
I'm just going to light my Palo Santo here. Just a really nice smudge for clearing any like negative energy. So I invite you to close your eyes if you're able to. Just let's take a few really deep cleansing breaths in. So taking a deep breath in, filling our lungs all the way to the top, breathing in that Palo Santo smoke all the way to the top. When you think you can't anymore, take a little sip. Pausing here, holding. Take a moment to tune into your body. And now open your mouth and let it go. Another deep breath just like that. Big breath in, up, 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 up. Filling your lungs all the way to the top. Pausing here. Feeling our heart beating in our chest. The blood running through our veins. The stillness. Now open your mouth and let it go. Another deep breath in. Filling our lungs all the way to the top. Up, up, up. Pausing here. Feeling into where you might feel tense in your body. Bringing awareness of that. And then letting it go. Releasing this point. And now just return back to your normal breathing and gently bring yourself back into this space.
Thanks for that. So, here we are, season 2.
Yeah, season 2. Welcome.
Welcome
To season 2 of the Orphic podcast.
Yeah, that's what it is. So we had said in our last episode that we were maybe going to return in January. We decided to take a little bit more time and move with the seasons. So you will be listening to this in March. It is March right now. So thank you for being here to anyone that was here with us for last season or parts of last season. We really appreciate that. And also, I do feel like there's a lot of new people. So welcome to anyone that is new. We wanted to recap a little bit of a little more of who we are on this episode first. Yeah. And also just how we know each other and kind of maybe our intentions for the podcast and, what we're about here. I would say, so me and Mikayla met online in 2020, a big year, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In
everything changed.
Yeah. In a Facebook group. And then we became really good friends, spiritual besties, long distance. I'm in New York. Mikayla's in.
Yeah, what were you doing in 2020?
I was in grad school. Is that what you're? Yeah. I was in grad school like a year or two out of finishing my PhD. And I was in the midst of an extreme spiritual awakening, like a new level. I would say probably a lot of us maybe experienced their next level of spiritual awakening in 2020. And so when we became friends, we really just went through so many stages of our awakening together. And then we kind of just decided, in 2021-ish, we decided in 2022, let's make a podcast together and let's talk about it. And we, really enjoy talking through our own processes. For me, I'm expanding my spiritual channeling side, my intuitive side, my access to my own inner wisdom, as we say, or as I've learned. I like the way that that's put, because I do think that any of our intuition and just a lot of what we came here on this earth to bring, or the things that we're gravitated to share. They are encoded in our DNA. So they are in us. They are not outside of us, especially the things that we love and the things that we really feel passionately called to share. So I've been, yeah, I just, I love the universe. I love space. My PhD was on supermassive black holes and galaxies in the universe. And I really just feel like there's another component there that academia is not looking at. I just, I have my academic side, and then I have the whole spiritual side that I've been on this journey now for almost like 4 years in terms of my maybe next level spiritual awakening. Um, but yeah, I really want to bring people's attention to the universe and to the connected nature of it. And what I've been like, the downloads and the ideas that I have, are really about like the consciousness of celestial bodies, like soul contracts of galaxies, and also things like dimensions, and this higher, this other aspect of astrophysics that is not understood at all. Like where is the rest of the universe locked up in? 95% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy. And I think there's so much that we don't understand. And also I'm really interested in things like explaining the science of astrology, or just like the next level concepts where consciousness can come in. And so I really like using this podcast to share my ideas about that, new downloads, new ideas when they come in. Had some cool ideas about like the whole universe being a magnet, and how like this back and forth, like really a lot of what I'm so interested in is like this, like what's the physics of the communication that we have with the universe. Like we have a telepathic communication can happen between us. Like me and Mikayla could telepathically communicate, just like we could telepathically communicate with the sun, just like we could telepathically communicate with a being on Venus, or that was on Venus at some other time. And there's just this inherent connection between everything, and there's like a communication. And so I'm just dying to know how it all works, and that's really what I'm doing. But also, in terms of just for me, what we do on this podcast is really just talk through processes. Like, I'm not just talking about astronomy, but I do really nerd out, and I do like to teach about things. And sometimes I'll get like really physicsy, but it depends. And but yeah, just really talking through our processes. Like one of the first few episodes, the fifth episode of our first season, I told the whole story about like this addiction that I had in grad school and that I overcame in the end of grad school. Also, yeah, just really being really open. For some reason, I feel like I just feel very capable of being an open book in this space. I guess because it just feels like me and Mikayla. And yeah, I kind of don't really mind it. So I just like to talk out my own processes here, and I've found that a lot of people do relate. Yeah. So what about you?
Yeah, so like Alyssa said, we met online in 2020 with her living in New York, or I guess Boston, where you're going to school, and me living in Canada. In 2020, I graduated from respiratory therapy in Canada and was immediately rushed into the hospitals, rushed into the workforce to work. Most of the other medical students, nurses, physiotherapists, etc., students, anyways, medical students, nursing students, were paused. Their programs were completely paused, and they were taken out of their clinical, they're out of their practicum, and completely out of the hospitals for their safety during COVID. And the respiratory therapy students were the only students in Alberta, as well as I believe Canada, to actually be pushed through quicker because of the fear that they would need us. So right off the bat in 2020, I was finishing my school, which was also a very fast-paced program, a very hands-on, fast-paced, in the hospital
Yeah.
um program and environment, and then moved into the workforce very quickly with an added amount of pressure than most new grads have, because they're needing us right away to help with COVID. And now we're seeing an increase in the amount of people that are in the hospitals and just kind of the hysteria of everything going on. It was like pretty wild at that time, especially for being so like fresh out of school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that. I was doing that in 2020, working, and then I got like an intuitive hit to leave my city, Edmonton, and to move out to the Okanagan, to move out. So I lived in Alberta before Edmonton and worked at the U of A hospital. And now then I got the intuitive hit to come out to the Okanagan, to come to the mountains in British Columbia. So it was kind of on a whim. I came home from school or from work one day and said to Bryce, like, do you want to move out to Kelowna? And neither of us had spent like a ton of time. Like, I had come out here for a bachelor party like once, like hadn't spent a lot of time out here. And he was like, yeah, I do.
And Bryce is
And
your
from that point,
fiance. You just said,
yeah. Now fiance. So at the time, we just began searching for places to come, searching for jobs, searching for whatever could get us out here. And there was a less than 1% vacancy rate at the time.
Really?
Which was very low for rentals and stuff like that. And we ended up actually manifesting like literally our dream home, little A-frame in the or A-frame in the cabin, A-frame in the forest, cabin in the woods.
That house is so cool.
Style. We lived there for about 7 months, and then rural. We lived rural.
Rural?
So like
rural?
Rurally. Is that a word? Rurally?
Rurally.
It's very hard to say.
I don't know.
Anyways, you get what I'm saying. So we lived on the west side of the Okanagan Lake, where it is more rural, in the forest. We lived at that place, the dream home, for like 7 months, knew that we absolutely loved the place. We're super grateful not to be living in the city anymore and to find a place that wasn't in the city that was within budget for us. Like, it was a miracle completely manifested, that place. Knew we loved the area and ended up moving down the street in the same area for long term. And that's where we're living now. And it's been amazing. We live like in the forest. We have a cute little garden and a nice big backyard. The fires did rip through here in 2021 and then got pretty close again this past summer in 2023. So that was a whole process on its own. But anyways, so moved out here, was a respiratory therapist out here for a very small amount of time. And I really had to go in and listen to my body on that one, because it was getting really, really tough for me. The environment and the energies and like the demands from the job, like working 12-hour shifts, being usually short staffed, 12-hour shifts. And then I'd have an hour drive there, hour drive home. And it was getting to a point where like, I wasn't able to even like meet my basic needs, really. Like, I was having a hard time even like showering at the end of the night because I was so exhausted. I was having a hard time sleeping because even though I was so tired, I was having a really difficult time sleeping because I was so stressed and I was so anxious because this new hospital that I had gone to, the first hospital that I was at, if I would have continued on that career path, it would have been a really good hospital to work in because there was a lot of support. And I really did like the environment and the people there. And it wasn't necessarily the people at the next hospital, but the healthcare system in BC is not doing great right now. Very understaffed. And this hospital in particular, not so good. I remember the first day I walked in, and I'm a new grad, by the way. And usually, like, it takes new grads in this type of work. Like, we're working in the ICUs, we're working on code teams. Like, we're always there when things are like very critical and like
Yeah.
life or death, because we deal with the lungs. Like, we're working with people constantly on life support machines, like managing the life support teams, putting the breathing tubes in their throats. Like, if people come in and it's an accident, um like, we're dealing with that and emerge. Like, we're always the one, like, something goes wrong, you call the respiratory therapist. Always, we're the ones like running the code teams. So in a really big hospital like in Edmonton, you're a little more spaced out, because there's multiple respiratory therapists in each unit. So in each like ICU unit, there's multiple of us, and then there's multiple of us, or at least like 2 or 3 in emerge. And then there's some on like the floors and the wards, and we're like all spread out the hospital. So like, if you need support, there's support. This hospital that I came to after that, and I'm a new grad. And so also, mind you, like, you usually work yourself up in the first couple of years, like, to working some of the more intense positions. So like, the emerge is a really intense position, because you have to be able to like think really quick and know what you're doing to handle like those really intense situations. So sometimes the new grads, like, they'll work their way up to working in like an emerge. They'll be working more in the ICUs with a little bit more support, and they'll take like a couple of years before they go into like an emerge. But the hospital in BC that I came to, we were expected to like right away be working in emerge, and then to work nights completely alone. So like, be the only RT for the entire hospital. So for the ICU, for the emerge, for all of the wards patients, and to work like a night alone, which is just insane. And it wasn't like wasn't anyone's fault, except for being low staffed, and that's just like how it had to be. But it felt like a lot of pressure as a new grad, a lot of pressure, because it's not just like, oh, maybe I have a bad day today and like I counted the numbers wrong. It's like, no, like, I like, people's lives are like in my hands. Like, having a bad day and fucking up isn't really an option. And then it was just like so much to learn on top of that, just like learning new systems and yada yada yada. So it was getting to a point where my body was trying to communicate with me like, this is not working, this is not good, because I couldn't even take care of myself. Like, thank God I had Bryce, because he would like cook me meals and help me make my lunch and like all that stuff, because it was just like enough for me to literally brush my teeth and have a shower and go to bed. And then I realized I needed to like take some space, like take a break. So I pulled myself back from the hospital at that time, and I was like, I don't really know what's going to happen now. And I didn't go back after that. And I remember having a reading with somebody who said, if I would have kept working, I literally would have killed myself. And I think she was right. And I mean, well, also, so I pulled myself back out to take like a break from working in the hospital, to just for like my mental health and my body, because I just needed it. And then shortly after, they actually rolled out the vaccine requirements here in Canada, and I chose to not get V'd. So I actually legally couldn't return or continue working after that either. So those did kind of come together, go together. And yeah, so I feel like that was a little bit of a tangent about my backstory, but I do feel like it's important. It's coming up and is important to talk about, because I don't know if I've gotten really, really full into it before.
Not really. A little bit.
And
a little bit about the burnout.
And there has been a really big process for me, or a process that I'm moving through. I'm learning too not to like feeling into using the word big. Yeah, because I find, and this was a conversation I had with my mentor too, actually, because I asked him specifically after I sat in a plant medicine ceremony, and I reached out to him and I was like, do you have any suggestions, or like what do you recommend for integrating? Because integrating is really, really, really important. And I'll be talking about that more on the episode when it comes to plant medicine ceremonies or any type of spiritual ceremony, spiritual work, healing, whatever.
Yeah.
But I asked him, like, do you have any suggestions or any recommendations for integrating really big shifts or like big plant medicine ceremonies or whatever? Because it felt big to me at the time. And he said, yeah, don't make it so big.
That's interesting.
And I was just like,
yeah,
it is interesting. Because it is just our minds, because it is true. Because once we like put that like perception that something is so big or it's so whatever, it's like we kind of put these limiting beliefs on it that we have to do all of these things, or something has to look a certain way, or it's almost like kind of makes it like unattainable in a way too. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I do think integrating is very, very important. And that's not to say that it's not, because it is. But I think it's our minds that make some of these, like, I don't know, things, I guess, feel so big,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's
and
also
I think,
sorry, go.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's about the expectation, obviously, about like if you're supposed to be so different after. And I mean, what comes to mind is just that, life is this continuation. So even if you are going to be so different after, there's probably still another big version of you waiting after that next version. So it's like, it's all big or it's all medium.
What I just realized what it is when I was speaking, is it's the safety and the integration to the nervous system. So if we say something's really, really big, that seems harder and scarier to integrate into the nervous system. And that's the limiting belief, or that's what our mind puts on it when it doesn't have to be. And that's what it is. So it's like the calibration to the nervous system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's really what integrating is. And I'm definitely going to be talking a lot more about that on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because, and like, since we're talking about it, we might as well keep going, because I feel like we're just like, tangents are kind of like,
that's what we do here.
Because we get into the processes and like the conversations.
That's what we do.
And stuff. And I'm good at like being like, okay, and then like circling back. But anyways, I like was just watching a little reel on Instagram that was like, psychedelics are not a silver bullet. Like they're not a silver bullet to like completely healing yourself and completely changing everything in like one stop shop experience.
Yeah.
And it's true. They can absolutely assist you in changing your life. I believe that, because I have had my own experiences that have been really profound. But it's not just the psychedelics alone. It's ourselves continuing to show up, continuing to go into those spaces, and consistently choosing who we want to be, right? Because the psychedelics can come through and give us a great experience and can give us some revelations or realizations. But if we move back into the real world and don't actually shift those things in our external world, or change those things, or like act on those realizations, then everything's going to stay the same, right? Like nothing changes unless you change. And sometimes the healing work is just like really showing up in a consistent way. And it's not about the instant gratification. And with like psychedelic ceremonies and plant medicine journeys coming more online, this is what the reel was saying, is that as humans, especially now in this age, we do desire this kind of like one pill fix all, like instant gratification kind of fix. And I think and you see that becoming more popular. And I think you see people seeking that. But for like psychedelics and plant medicine is not for everyone. And it's not just like a quick fix where you don't have to do anything. Like, so yeah, we will get into this a lot more, because I do have a lot to say about this topic in particular. And then after, it's the integration. So even the realizations and what we've learned, how can we integrate that into the nervous system in a way that we feel safe so it doesn't feel so big?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the nervous system, like it does need more incremental things. Like, the nervous
Well, it's
system isn't
why,
going to be fixed in a day. It's and also from my experience too of moving through things, like going through processes that feel like like long-term nervous system healing processes. It
yeah.
is kind of like, an everyday, or like slowly but surely ish.
Well, and even with the plant medicine ceremonies, because like in my experience, I think they can be very, very healing. Um, but how can we set ourselves up to get the most out of it instead of
Yeah.
just going and feel? Because that's the other thing is these medicines work with you. They work with your spirit. So there has to be a certain level of understanding of that and co-creating with that, and understanding that, yes, I still have to show up and look at whatever's kind of being brought to the surface through the medicines, or being available for the teaching from the medicines, and realizing that it's an internal journey, because the plant medicines, they're not this external thing that come to fix you. It doesn't work like that. They work with you. They move through you, and it's an internal experience. And I think that's what sometimes people can miss. And then, it's the integration piece with the nervous system. So the nervous system, if you, like, for example, if you've been brought up, if you've experienced like trauma in your life, or maybe you've been brought up in like a toxic family situation or toxic relationships, your nervous system craves that. Even though it's not good for you, your nervous system craves that because it's familiar. So now if we're trying to get our nervous systems to attune to and calibrate to what's really good for us, it might reject it if it doesn't feel safe. So that's why it's good to go. It's like the integration process and that calibrating of the nervous system, of slowly and gently bringing that into our bodies, bringing that into our nervous system, and letting that settle and not making it so big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like also what kind of was coming to me as you were talking was in terms of, well, I've never done like a psychedelic ceremony or anything like that yet, but what was coming to mind was, an illumination on different parts of your energy body where you're wounded, or like where you have wounds. I know for you, there was this sisterhood wound that was really illuminated from your first ceremony. And I think the way that works is we do have this energy body that has these imprints from this lifetime and previous future lifetimes. So there is this kind of continued there's like our nervous system for how we interact with everything, and like in real time, and things that get affected also over time. But there's also just this energy blueprint that we have where things get lodged into it, and where there's just these imprints in our energy body, and we have different flavors of them, and those are the things that would come up as repeating lessons in this lifetime or others, because they would be in your energy in your blueprint field, is what I'm feeling.
Well, and furthermore, not just in your energy field, but also like actually in your body, like in your physical field. Like we know now, even scientifically, like there's many studies out there that we actually do hold trauma in the body.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's usually like beliefs that are kind of layered. I had this visual today of like these, I guess I was kind of thinking about my own just academic wounds or beliefs, and I saw like this ball of energy like in my body up towards my left shoulder, and I saw it having these layers, and these layers were these different sets of beliefs that had come about through different experiences. And it was like this, it was like, oh, this is your academic trauma, like portion of your energy blueprint. Congratulations. And I don't know, it was kind of just like shown to me. And then it's, the peeling back of the beliefs. So there's like a lot of beliefs intertwined in there.
Yeah, it definitely is layered in that way. And then you spoke to the mushroom ceremony for me, like around the sister wound and stuff. So I would recommend to anyone too, if you're here and you haven't listened to those episodes, there's 4 in total. There's the mushroom ceremony 1, part 1 and part 2, and the mushroom ceremony 2, part 1 and part 2. Go back and check those out and listen to those, because those are some really, really good episodes. There's some really great nuggets in there, and also a really good listen if you're interested in feeling into if plant medicine or psychedelics are for you, and kind of feel like listening to my process in that, and how that went for me. But yeah, and I think another way, and so clearly this is one topic that we will be speaking about on the podcast, is like plant medicines and psychedelics and stuff like that, and healing through that. What was I gonna say? Oh, I was just gonna say, yes. I think they can speed up the process. I think you can do a lot of healing in a short amount of time, but only if you're willing to meet the medicine where it's at. And I do think there is a lot to be said about the integration process before and after. And I'm going to get into more of that on the podcast in the episodes to come for sure. So I don't know how we got onto this tangent about psychedelics or plant medicine. So anyways, back to my story. I wasn't able to work as an RT anymore. In 2020 was a year of awakening for me. I would say when I was young, I was pretty intuitive, like talking to spirits, constantly talking to the animals, talking to the trees, like that. Like that was totally me. Talking to like my dead grandparents, like, and then as life does, I became really like shut down through my experiences through elementary school. Just my experiences as a young kid, especially a teenager, especially through high school. I just seemed to get more and more like just like bogged down, shut down. And it was around probably 2018 when I'd say I'd have my like moment of spiritual awakening, of that like reopening again for me. After I felt really called to go sit with a psychic medium, and she mostly did sessions for people who had people that had crossed over before. And it was interesting for me because like I just knew that I was meant to like go see her, but like I didn't have anyone specific that I was actually trying to connect with. So it was really interesting. And then I got there, and then the session mostly ended up being about me and like, oh, like, you're intuitive. Do you know this? And like, so that like just like opened up this door of like, whoa, like this world is real. Like these realms are real. My intuition is real. Like I can start working on that. I can start building on that. I can start following that. So even though I was still in school at the time, that was a year where I definitely like opened that up more, and I was really like intrigued. And just thought it was like cool, like, getting readings and stuff like that. And then 2020, I would say it was like and I've talked about this with some of my friends before, the really harsh, like wake up to the clown world, spiritual awakening that I think a lot of us also felt. It's like different than the first spiritual awakening.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I feel like the first one, it's like kind of like, ooh, like airy fairy,
right?
Like, ooh,
totally.
Like,
Yeah. I was gonna say too, like I could almost classify the stages. Like 2018, I had like a law of attraction spiritual awakening, Abraham Hicks, listening to a lot of inspirational law of attraction type awakening, and I feel like a lot of people go through this process. And then 2019, and the 2019 for me was actually more about auras and energy fields, and I discovered this person online, Mystic Mikayla is her name, who is an aura reader and sees colors around people. And I was like, whoa, we have auras and energy and chakras. And I was like, that's cool. And then 2020 was like, the world is nothing as you've believed. And also, there's aliens and we can talk to them. And it was like, well, that escalated quickly. But I was on board. You too,
Yeah,
right?
The 2020 awakening was a really harsh, like, holy fuck. It was a little difficult on the mental health there for a little bit, and I bet you a lot of you can relate to that. But the
It's a lot to take
2018
in.
to 2020 was more of just like, ooh, like I can use
Yeah.
crystals and they have like
Yeah.
a vibration
Yeah.
and there was a lot of good things I learned too. Like I learned how to energetically protect myself, how to energetically cleanse and clear myself at that time, which was also really, really important for me because I started using that in school. I kind of had a hard time in my whatever that year was of school, like in my practicum, just also kind of having some difficulty in academia, feeling really low on myself. Like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Just like that really low point. And that's actually when I felt called to see the medium. And then a lot of learning around belief work too. And it was so interesting because once I was able to learn how to cleanse and clear my energy and ground in, which like this was unheard of to me before. I didn't understand what this was. And then I learned how to do it. And then was like, I can like tangibly feel the difference in my energy when I'm grounded and when I'm protecting my aura and when I'm like projecting my light out really bright so nothing can attach to it. And so I started using those while I was finishing my clinical in the hospitals. And it was an absolute like game changer. Like it changed everything for me. And that's just doing energetic work. Mind you, I also brought my black tourmaline crystals and I kept them up in my pocket or in my like sports bra close to my heart to protect me. Because that's the thing, like in hospitals, I was really, really, and you'll learn this more about me. And this is why I do shadow work, because my spirit does walk on this line of like kind of the worlds, like the light and the dark. As like a steward or like a guide, as a guide in these realms. I'm in service. I work with the light, I'm service to the light, but I also learn how to for myself and can guide others into going into the shadows and these other pieces of themselves. And so I kind of walk this line in between. As well as like to the connections with the spirits on the other side. But anyways, in a hospital, there's a lot of dense energy. Like
When
there's
did
a
you first
reason.
realize that you were a medium yourself?
When did I?
Yeah. When did you first realize that you could see spirits or talk to them or cross over souls and stuff like that? Because that was your first, like, didn't you, I remember at least when we first started talking in 2020, you were telling me that you were like a medium and that you were working on like mediumship, practicing that stuff.
Yeah. The first time that as I got older, then I had my kind of first awakening and I had like validation of this was when I went and sat with that medium for the very first time, because what happened was as I sat down and she's just like, your ears were ringing like the whole way here, right? And I was like, yes. Like, how did you know that? Because that's like wild, right? Like, that's not something you can look up on Facebook and figure out. Like, that's just like there's no one's gonna know my ears are ringing except for me and her now. And she's like, these are your. So this is what she was the one that opened me up to this whole realm at this point. And she goes, these are your spirit guides. They're trying to connect with you. They're trying to talk to you. And I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Who the fuck are those guys?
And once she started speaking to me and telling me all this, it was like just a deep, deep resonance of like, oh yeah, like I know that. It was like all like it was like coming back from when I was really young. Because when I was really young, like I could sense spirits definitely, and I didn't necessarily understand it though. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, like there's a spirit over there, but I definitely could like sense them in like my own way. And sometimes when you're young, you like forget that not everyone can like do that. As well as I've always had the most crazy and vivid dreams. Like I can literally remember dreams that I had when I was like 5 years old, and they will still sometimes just randomly pop up in my memories. It's really interesting.
Whoa.
But anyways,
Mhm.
we were sitting down and she just kind of was talking to me like, well, she used the word gifted, which I will say I don't necessarily resonate with that word now, because I think
Mhm.
all of us, if not most of us,
Yeah.
everyone like who's listening to this anyway has the capacity to tap into like their intuition
Mhm.
and stuff. But I don't know if it was like always that way really on earth. Um and she was just like talking to me as if I knew. She's like, "Well, you're gifted, right? Like she's like you're going to be doing the exact same thing I'm doing like one day." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Wait, what?" Like it took
Yeah.
me like a second, and she was just like, "Oh, like I'm going to grab my." She's like, "I only use these oracle decks for my gifted clients." And she's like, "And I only like light this incense for my gifted clients." And she's like, "And I
Mhm.
didn't know you, but like that my guides told me to light this specific incense and use this specific oracle deck." And I was just like, whoa, like that took a
Mhm.
second to like sink in. But then once it did, I was like, I totally resonate with this, because I remember watching like Long Island Medium back in the day and just being
Yeah.
like so intrigued. Like I just thought I could watch it for like ever. Like I just thought it was
Mhm.
so interesting. And I always remember being like, man, I wish I could do that. Like I think that's so cool.
Mhm.
Like I wish I could do that. And then so it was basically that moment when she had told, when the medium there had told me, no, like you're gifted and like you can tap into these things and you can use these, and actually like I see you in the future using these. Just a second.
And can we talk about that for a second? I just think it's so interesting how, like, when we grew up, there was this whole, like, probably it's all shifting because of the awakening and the ascension and the frequency of the planet rising. But I just think it's so, I mean, also probably by design of the powers that were, to that, like, I used to think that the people on the TV shows like Long Island Medium, and there was this other medium show that I really liked, Monica the Medium. I used to just think like, oh, those people have those powers and like I don't and I never will, right? And it was like that's what we thought for so long, and it wasn't even until maybe not even towards like the middle end of 2020 when I really started taking in so much information that I learned that this is something that like everyone has, or especially people that are already into it, can really that are already there, that are already on the path to learn how to tap into this. And I just think it's so crazy that that transition was had, that like there was a time where I really believed like, oh, only certain people have special gifts and everyone else doesn't, and like that was such a strong belief. And then now it's like, oh no, everyone does, and you can learn how to tap into it. It's
Yeah.
wild.
I mean, yeah, and I felt like that and believed that too at the time, because and it all is also depending on like your lifetime and your process and your contract that you've set up for
Yeah.
yourself,
Right.
how that kind of comes about for you, because some
Right, because those
people,
people, it did come easier. It's like, there's people that everyone has a different path, and I've talked about this a lot from my process with engaging in my spiritual gifts and everything. Yeah, everyone has their own path to it and their own process with it.
yeah, like Teresa Long Island Medium, like she talks about how when she was very young, like they were just like she could physically see them, they were there.
Mhm.
Um and then she just like continued using that gift and like growing into it. But everyone is different, because like that's specifically connecting with spirits who have like passed, and she was also able to see them physically, because we also have like all the clairs, like there's 5 of them, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. I don't know what the other 2 are,
Mhm.
but it's basically like being able to see into those realms, hear those realms, or like a deep inner
Mhm.
knowing.
Yeah.
And there's like smell too, like these like subtle
Mhm.
senses into these like realms that are beyond us. And so for her, she could very physically see, and she could hear. So like for myself, like I don't I don't see spirits. Like, I'm not open to that yet. I feel like I will one day. And like, I think like sometimes like, yes, like little like shadows and shimmers and stuff. Yes. But like a full like one, no, because I think there's a piece of me that's still afraid of that. So I haven't been shown that quite yet. So people see things in different ways. And I'll also say, yes, I think there was a point where people were kind of just like gifted and they had these things. And I also think there was a place where it's kind of like you went and seen a psychic medium, and they did the tarot readings, or you went and seen a medium and they told you about your loved one that has passed. And it does feel to me like we're moving away from that a little bit more, because we're learning to tap into our own intuition and have these own connections. Not to say that we can't still go see a medium and blah, 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 because we absolutely can. But I'm finding that we're learning to tap into our own intuition and tap into these clairs and all these pieces of ourselves for our own selves and for our own healing and for like our own connection. And that's what I believe is really happening on the planet right now, is that we are learning we're learning how to unlock these gifts or these abilities that already exist within us. But there is an aspect of unlocking. Like, a lot of us are learning to unlock it, because most of us haven't been born with it since birth. Like, just truthfully, some of us have, like Teresa. Most of us haven't. And it's part of our contract to actually learn how to unlock those. And then that's going into activating the 12-stranded DNA that's within us, because most of our brain, most of our DNA is not actually activated. And right now, with the evolution, also with anything I say on the podcast, take it with a grain of salt, like keep what resonates, like leave what doesn't. But right now, with where human evolution is going, is actually our 13th strand of DNA is coming online. Yeah. And so this
heard about this.
Huh?
Said I've heard about this. Yeah.
And so this is quite literally the new human. But part of accessing these pieces of DNA, accessing more of our brain, is accessing these abilities to have these subtle senses and communicate with the world around us. So communicating with the world around us, like, yes, it can look like connecting with a loved one who's passed over, connecting with a spirit. And it also can look like animal communication and talking to animals, our dogs, our horses, talking to the trees, talking to the land, talking to Mother Earth. It's that nonverbal communication and learning to listen and build the connections with spirit in whatever form spirit wants to show you. And that's why this healing work is so important, because there is a level of healing the trauma, healing the heavier stuff that we've gone in on or gone through. So healing the nervous system, healing those subconscious beliefs that don't serve us, so that we really fully can open up and embrace these abilities and unlock these subtle senses that we have. And then from that, begin to apply those in our life to connect to the trees and listen, to connect to the land, to connect to the animals, to connect to each other from a really heart-centered place. Because once I'm learning to do the healing work, I'm not projecting, my fears, my insecurities, my anger as much, because I'm able to really feel into that space within me and go in deep into that, and then move from a heart-centered place. So once we begin connecting with the trees, the animals, etc., and listening to, oh, my needs are this, or I desire to coexist with you in this way. I desire to live in sacred reciprocity with you. Then we really start building our heaven on earth, and that's what we're moving to. But that doesn't just happen, as people think, that all of a sudden we're going to wake up one day and we're going to be in new earth or this new paradise. It's like, no. We're only going to get there if we build it. Like, it's not a free ride.
Yeah.
It's not a free ticket. It's a building. So,
I have a few other things to say about the higher aspects of consciousness. It was like some other stuff coming in. So like we are in an active process of opening our minds up to higher octaves of consciousness. And one of the ways that that's being done, like, so just in terms of we're living a new life right now where we now understand that there is nonverbal communication possible. So let's say now there's this new version of you that now goes into the forest or something that didn't 5 years ago, or like now looks at your animal or a horse or something and understands that there is able to be an exchange that goes beyond the classical the processes that we understand as attached to the layers of the existing levels of consciousness, like third dimension and below, the reality that we thought we knew and understood. So when you're opening yourself up to these different octaves of consciousness, what then is happening is you're filling in, like you're seeing new things in this range of space that was previously unseen. Right. So like now there's some kind of nonverbal communication between you and your animal. So what's happening there? There's like a telepathic exchange going on. And so that is, it's instantly shining a light on something. I just keep being brought back to like, there's this space in between where you thought there was nothing and now there's something. And what that is doing is it's like opening us up to higher octaves of consciousness. And, yeah, I think that was all I wanted to say on that. But also just learning about this connectivity, like being aware of the energy body. It's just this really big theme of, like seeing interactions and seeing possibilities where before we saw nothing. And that's pretty cool because then that lets us build a whole new life around magic.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing too, is like, we have been brought up in a world where we've been told, or most of us anyways, that magic doesn't exist and that these things aren't real, and that's not how the real world works. And so like, it's not our fault that we have these subconscious programming, this like conditioning, because we've been brought up in a world that has been trying to condition us and program us in a way so that we won't access our gifts, because we're very powerful, very powerful if we can tap in and listen to our hearts, to where our heart is leading us. What's more powerful than love? If you walk in love and you lead in love, you're fucking unstoppable. So I would say to those that are beginning their journeys, their healing journeys, their intuition journeys, start meditating. Like, just a really simple place to start. Just tap in and just start meditating. And if you want to take it a step further, specifically connect with your heart and get curious. What would my heart like to tell me right now? What does my heart have to say? Allowing yourself to listen to your heart without judgment or expectation, and just feeling into that. But and I'm working on like not saying but as much and saying and, because but kind of feels like it like cuts it off, and it's like,
yeah.
But and is like, you can tell the difference. Like, just saying you can energetically feel the difference between saying but and.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, now I don't even remember what I was saying.
Connecting to the heart, tapping into what the heart wants to tell you. The heart is the reason that love is the most powerful force, and there is a magnetism with the heart, and I am always talking about the aura and the magnetic fields. Leave to me to bring it back to the sciencey things. Our heart literally physically generates a magnetic field, and it's the center point of our toroidal field. Like it's literally it's the it's the 0 point of our field. So that's where our energy is generated from. That's where our
Yep.
magnetism is generated from, the heart. So yeah.
And it's really interesting in the day and age we're living in now, because like when a lot of these things kind of used to be looked at as like pseudoscience, or just like energy isn't like real, or like not like tangible or something you could like prove, there's actually a lot of science that is starting to come out more and more to like back up these things,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of us have already been like feeling. So you can
Yeah.
definitely like look into like the actual studies that they've been doing on like the electric magnetic field, or like the effects of the heart
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, because they're out there, and it's like really 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 cool to see that come up now. But things are changing in this world. So like if you feel like what we're talking about is interesting to you or resonates with you, and you're still in a place where you're like I mean, we're all learning. Like we don't we
Mm-hmm.
like we die when we stop learning. Like we're constantly here to learn. It's experience of learning. But if you're just kind of at the beginning of like, oh, like can I tap into this piece of me too? Can I listen to my heart? Can I like have a strong intuition and like follow that? It's like yes, you absolutely can. And we're moving into a world where all of us are going to be tapped in to that space and moving and living from that place. So, and right now we're in a space of building that and assisting each other and guiding each other, and being in presence with each other as we go in to not only do the healing work so that we're lighter and we have more capacity for love, but so that we're also undeniably tapped in with our inner guide, our inner source.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so looping back, um, yeah. So then when I was in the hospital, after I'd went to the medium that first time and was beginning to learn more about my energy and clearing myself and cleansing myself, I would do that every day. I would wake up and I'd change my practice to the first thing I would do in the morning was I would ground myself in, and I would set up my energetic bubble of light. I would set an intent for protection, and I would call in Archangel Michael, and I began to cultivate that relationship. And I also took my black tourmaline with me. But the difference that I began to notice was like undeniable. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything changed. And I would also start um using affirmations to change my subconscious, and also working with
Mm-hmm.
spirit, because I also learned that like your spirit guides are here to help you. The spirit team is here to help you, but we all have free will, and they cannot help you unless you give them permission. So now I was speaking with
Mm-hmm.
them every day and saying, okay, this is how I would like my day to go at my clinical. This was because I was still functioning with pretty high anxiety, but like I'm setting an intent to have a really beautiful day. I'm setting an intent to be grounded. I'm setting an intent to whatever, get along with the people that I'm working with, to like connect, to be confident.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up doing like really well in clinical that year. When the clinical before that summer, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like it was not really great. I just had
Mm-hmm.
some moments where I just like felt really low, and then all of a sudden I came back around and I was like doing so good, like, and I was connecting with the people around me. I was getting really good like, what's the word, reviews, or like
Mm-hmm.
reports. I was getting really
like
good reports from like my preceptors and the people that worked in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They enjoyed working with me. I was easy to get along with. I knew what I was doing, and I was shining that light. Like I was grounding in, and I was doing the energetic work every single day. And yes, the hospitals have a dense energy. So I was learning how to like connect myself too, because that was the thing when I first went to the medium too. She said, like, you have this really, really bright light. It's so bright, but because it's so bright, denser spirits and energies have been like kind of attaching onto you and have made this cloud around you. And I was like, yeah, fuck, I feel that. Like, I just feel exhausted all the time. And she's like, that's why, like, they're leeching from you. And they're like, and so she like cleared that, and then it was up to me to maintain that, and then in the hospital use my protection. So then even if I was in a moment where I could like sense kind of like a little denser energy, or maybe I was in a conversation I didn't enjoy, I would just go back to that light and I would just shine it really bright and shine my protection. And that really helped me in those years of clinical, of being grounded in. And then as well as there's many spirits that are coming and going and passing at the hospital. So there was multiple times where I would actually like open up portals, or I would open up portals for spirits to like cross over. And I still do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I would do that in the hospital, but it was interesting because I would just like do that in, my mind. It's not like I'm announcing that to people. And we did have that one episode where I went to the Lincoln Awareness Ranch, and in my session, the facilitator, Lucia, actually brought that up because one of the spirits came back to thank me, which was like wild. And I just
that was really wild.
Immediately like burst into tears.
That was cool confirmation.
But anyways, why I think I went into so much about what I used to do in the transition, because like, now I've transitioned. I work from home. I do energy medicine sessions. I do the shadow alchemy sessions. I do past life regressions. I'm building, now there'll be more of those out when this episode drops, but I'm building like in-person gatherings with my sister Leah. I have my metamorphosis program. So if you're like interested in doing going in and doing the healing work and learning to cultivate that connection to like that deep inner wisdom, and there's so much more to it. And you can go to like my page on Instagram and go into my link and like check it out and see if like it's something that you'd be interested in. But that is a transformational container for that type of work. So I work with being a guide in that as well. But anyways, what I had realized is I still was holding actually like a lot of grief from that past, and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. So even in this year, I've been processing and been moving through that, because it was something that I wasn't so aware of yet. I was like pushing it down. And then I went to Pam Dillon. She's an amazing body talk worker, quantum medicine healer. She had a Wild and Wise gathering, and we had to go around the circle and share something. And it's like, you're meant to be really present with each person that's sharing. So don't think about what you're going to say. Just like wait until it gets to be your turn, and then you just speak from the heart. And she did ask a question, and it related to my old job as an RT at the time. And I just like completely like burst into tears in front of like 30 people. And I was like, oh shit, like there's some more for me here. And so this year it was like allowing me to feel grief, because like I went to school for like 4 years for this job, and then I was like, just like not very long, like in the grand scheme of things, like not very long working in the field. also like student debt from that. Also the pain I felt from being told, no, like you actually can't come back to this job, like even if you want to, like the rejection of that, of how that felt, the exclusion of what that felt like, the feeling of not being like understood. So there was a lot of grief there from like going into something that, like, sure, I didn't love the 12-hour days and the shift work, and there's a lot of aspects of it that I didn't like, but I was good at it. I was really good at meeting patients where they're at. I was really good with patients who like maybe we're going to die soon. Like not everyone's like very comfortable with that, but there was something about me that I was really good in those moments, and I was really good at like the humanness of being in that space and meeting that person to person. So I missed that, and I had some grief around that. And then I think just like the shame and guilt that came up too. Like I think shame of like, well, these other like healthcare workers, like we need healthcare workers so much right now. Like our healthcare system is crumbling, like especially in the pandemic times. And I feel like I should be there. I feel like I should be helping. Like other people were able to get it together. Like they seem to be doing it. Like they seem to be able to do it. Like even though it's really hard. Like if I tell most people about this, they're like, holy fuck, that's really hard. I felt really weak compared to like my peers and my coworkers. And also in the newer hospital that I went to, like mental health was not a thing. Like they literally had the coworkers I had access to go talk to a counselor or therapist, and they just brushed it off like it was nothing, which is like their own journey. But the attitude around like any type of care, emotional care, mental care, physical care, was not the greatest. And it wasn't their fault. It was also a programming and conditioning. But there is this thing that, and most healthcare workers or a lot of service workers like firefighters or paramedics or policemen, it is a thing to be known that these people can tend to have a really dark sense of humor because it's like a coping mechanism. So part of that also went with the like, no, I don't need to go talk to somebody, like, no, and like just like stuff it down and become really, really hard. And you would see that with a lot of people too. And I was just so fucking sensitive. Like I was so sensitive to everything going on and still learning how to navigate that with like between my coworkers' emotions and feelings and then the people that I was working with, and then their families and the patients, and like just the energy and the spirits that were all in the hospital. But there was a time where I felt really ashamed that I wasn't able to do better. And I was really hard on myself for that, and like the guilt that came with that too, like, oh, I should be helping, I should be able to do better. And so that was a process of unpacking for me this year, because the reality of it is I'm not meant to be doing that anyways. And so, you know, like rejection is redirection, and it was the universe slowly pulling me away into what was meant for me anyways. But that was my process with that. So anyways, second spiritual awakening, really waking up to like the clown world in 2020. So that was difficult in the hospital too, because now I had this awakening. So it was full. The first awakening was like, oh, I can use energy clearing, and I can use these crystals, and I can connect to my heart, and I can connect to spirits in other realms, and I'm learning how to do that. And then the 2020 harsh, as I like to say, the awakening to the clown world was like, that was a real like reality shattering, like harsh, rude, fucking kick you in the ass, like holy fuck, wake up moment. Because this is when, for me, things were coming through. My knowledge, I was learning like about the child sex trafficking rings.
Yeah.
Things for me about the pandemic were not starting to feel good in my body, the control element. The conspiracy theories were like all over the place at that time. But now with this newfound connection to my intuition and my inner guide, I was beginning to tap into that and feeling into these different things and realizing, oh fuck, like the world is not what I thought it was. There is a darkness here that exists. And I was beginning to see that darkness for what it really, really was. And for a little bit, it felt really scary. It felt like, holy fuck, it was a little tough, like just like on the mental part a little bit, because it does feel like your reality breaks. Like once you have, at least in my experience, when you wake up to that piece of it and you can't unsee those things, it's like everything has changed. Everything is different. And I think that's around the time that you and I connected, because we connected on that Facebook page, which was like a reality TV, like a Bachelor Facebook page, but we were talking about similar things. Because like also, I'm sure as a lot of you know that are listening, things were pretty heated in 2020. Like the online debates were out of control. Like, and the virtue signaling and the projecting and the like hashing it out in the comment section. It was wild. It was like, that was wild shit.
Yeah.
Like that was wild. Like it's still wild out there, but like that was really wild in 2020. And so we found each other, and we just gradually started chatting at first, like privately. And then we just started chatting more and more. And then it kind of became a thing of just like, oh, like, did you see this? How do you feel about this? What are your thoughts about this? Like kind of bouncing ideas back and forth. And it was like a really safe space for us to, I think, navigate that awakening at that time. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah. And I feel like it was also paired with this knowledge that like we're in a great awakening, that it was paired with this. It wasn't just like us waking up. It was like the information that we were taking in, that we were both resonating with, was about how like we are on a path, like the planet is raising in frequency. Like we're in the midst of a shift that has now begun. And like, this is what we're learning together. And it's like, oh shit, like, oh, okay. Like we're like, this isn't just like random. We're like strapped in for the ride now. And it's like, oh, this is our life now. Okay. We're in an awakening, and everyone else is going to wake up soon. And this is just 2020 was the first one of the initial waves of it. And it was just like, oh, wow. Like we're in a thing, and we each felt this, this purpose pulled to our respective things. And, I was realizing that my inner desire was to like change the whole field of astrophysics and completely change, like awaken people to these like bigger ideas through like, I don't know, just through completely changing the system, changing the theories, updating everything. I was just like, yo, that's what we're doing. This is going to be so cool. But also like there were, it's just so funny looking back at these different versions of me in these different phases, and just feel like, sometimes in that beginning stage, but it's also like, it's also where you were in life, and sometimes just being in those things where you feel like, oh, like this is gonna be like, we're gonna push through and it's gonna be this big thing, and then the way that life is it just kind of like keeps going, and then you have to like maintain that, and then it's like, oh shit, like we're 4 years later, like, oh, we're still here, we're still doing this thing, and now we're in this completely different stage where like now this is integrating this into our lives, and it's been an interesting transition. I just feel like lately sometimes I just like stop and like look around and I'm like, oh shit, all right, we're still here. Like we're still like doing this whole thing, because it was such this initial like sweep of energy, because it was, I think, because it was accompanied with this like remembrance and everything. It was this really big like, whoa, we're doing this whole big thing, and a lot of people are waking up at the same time, and you know, it almost kind of felt like this big thing. And like lately it's like, oh yeah, like, right, we're still here, and it's just integrating into a different stage of it. And yeah, it's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That was a wild time. Where I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially too, because like when you're awake and then like right, you've just woken up. Like I think there's this feeling of I gotta tell everybody, I gotta wake everyone up, and like kind of this like savior like thing too. And
Yeah.
then you learn pretty
And just being around people that aren't, and we're specifically seated in these environments, and you're around all these people in the hospitals that are completely living in a different reality, that are virtue signaling about these different things. And it was the same thing for me in academia. Even though we were all on Zoom screens and everything, it was like, I'm experiencing this whole world about the universe from a different perspective, and I'm around all these people that are just like, doo-doo-doo.
yeah.
That sounds mean. But you know what I mean? It was weird. It's weird,
It
like,
was
being
it was
around
very
people that
weird.
didn't change.
And now and just like navigating that at that time. And then as well as like we would go back and forth and speak about different like downloads or realizations or revelations that we have too. So I think it was me that said at one point, well, like, you know, we talk, because like at first, like we're typing Facebook
Yeah.
messages back and forth to each other. And then some of the messages are really long. And then we start just like voice memoing each other. And then where it's just like constantly voice memoing each other, just like every day, like multiple voice memos, just having like a conversation back and forth. And then I think at one point I was just like, well, why don't we make a podcast about this and like actually put what we're talking about somewhere and what we're speaking about? Because I think there is others out there who would get value to also listening in on like these conversations or these inquiries or these like going in deeper on some of these topics. And podcast was born.
Here we are. Yeah. And it's been cool. I think it's been a really good place to, you know, share our process, and a lot of people relate to it, I think. And there's just, yeah, it's a good space also just to, yeah, like to have a space to let your intuition kind of come through, and to just, you know, hit the ground running already. And like we're talking, and I feel like some of my best ideas or just things that I wouldn't normally think about kind of just, you know, they always come through like when we're in conversation. And that's why I think it's just, this is just a side note, just I think it's just cool. It is cool having the two of us, because then I feel like I get a lot of ideas like when I'm actively listening to you, you know what I mean? Like either about you or about like something else. And I feel like a lot of things happen like while I'm like listening to you. I don't know if that's your process too, but it's just cool. And yeah.
And so with like the greater vision of this space of this podcast, for me, my intent is really to build connection, really build community. So sometimes there's like little things out there that are like memes, are like the different stages like of awakening. And in the beginning, this was my experience, and I feel like from talking to other people, there's usually this, it's kind of like this tower moment where just like everything crumbles. You just like realize like, holy fuck, the world isn't what I thought it was. And you're also relating different. Like sometimes our relationships can change at this point because we're relating to each other different, or it's just like, you don't see what I see. And it's just like, it just feels like it's not bad or good, but we're just like at different like levels right now, or different spaces. And it can be very lonely. I think at the beginning of an awakening stage, people also tend to really go inward, and they start to kind of do that work, and they start to do like a lot of questioning, and they can get like really hermity and isolate themselves. Like that can happen, not always. I know in my experience it did. That was part of why I didn't understand it at the time. That's part of why I moved from where I did out here, because I had space for my friends and family. As much as I love my friends and family, I needed that space. It was essential for those years of growth where I was spending so much time now alone in reflection, in introspection, and rebuilding, like, who am I? Or just like asking myself, like, who am I? And like figuring that out. And then kind of emerging into this
Mm-hmm.
space of, okay, like I'm ready to find my soul tribe and find my people, but I needed that like alone time away from everything and everyone for a little bit. Um, so I feel like a lot of people have gone through that like hermity stage, that isolating stage, refiguring out their tribes and their people. And I'd really desire to like bring us together. Like if you resonate with the podcast and like want to find like-minded people, like to bring that together through the podcast and through this
Mm-hmm.
space is like our soul family, our soul tribe, like build this community.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though we have those moments where we maybe want to hermit or isolate in our process, it's community that heals. Like it's in community. Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't heal alone. We can do work alone, but like we can't heal. We can't just be alone, right? Like we need human connection. We need community. And so moving into a space of actually building real, authentic, heart-led communities from like-minded people that have the capacity to give this love and to receive and to meet each other where we're at and just really be present with each other. So that is my vision, like long term, and now is to bring the
Yeah.
people together that resonate with us, resonate with the message, and want to find this like a community.
Yeah, what I was also gonna say when you're talking about like soul family and stuff like that, I do feel like we have, like we do incarnate in soul groups and everything, and so there's your soul family that's in your life, your boyfriend, your husband, your sister, your mother, those things. But I do feel like whoops, wasn't recording the video. Let me maybe restart. Whatever. Okay. I do feel like we have these. I do feel like we have this soul family, that extends beyond our immediate soul family, um, that we incarnate with. So, meaning like this podcast has a network of souls that is in our like a larger soul group, and a soul family in that way. So, and I kind of see it as, yeah, there are different like pockets of soul families, in terms of, yeah, just any other communities that exist and community. So, just by us creating this timeline and having this strong intention for this podcast and for the souls that we want to reach, instantly in the quantum, we've already created an audience. When we had the idea to create the podcast, full inner knowing that it would be a success and that it would reach people, we in that moment also created the soul family that would be the listeners. So we're just really here to like broadcast a signal for us to all find each other and just be in this frequency of, our container and our people. And I just think it's very obvious when you resonate with someone and the people that you're meant to connect with. Maybe you have your favorite couple of channelers on Instagram, maybe you have your favorite couple of people on YouTube or whatever, but the frequency of people that you're just like, oh yeah, really into that. And I have this reel that I created last year that I titled The Frequency of Authenticity, and it was so last minute, and I just feel like it was like really last minute information channeled from the heart. And I feel like it's the most people resonate with that, and it's just about recognizing that soul connection instantly, or recognizing when someone is speaking with a frequency of authenticity, and just that instant recognition of like, oh my god, yeah, I totally fuck with you. So like that's what we're that's the goal of who we're trying to find. So yeah, anything else to add before we wrap it up?
No, just go, well, thank you for being here. first of all, like, thank you so much gratitude for our listeners. Yeah, if you resonate with us, please go give us a follow on our Instagrams. I'm at Mariposa Moodchild, and Alyssa's at interdimensional.astrophysics. Yeah.
Astrophysics. Yeah.
As well as please follow us on
It's a short handle.
the Orphic Podcast on Instagram, and also check out our YouTube page, the Orphic Podcast, where you can, actually like see our faces and see us chatting. So if you like YouTube, go check that out. And subscribe to us on Apple and or Spotify, and leave us a review, because that really helps us out. And yeah, I'm excited for season 2 and what's to come, and being a part of this community. And yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Share it with a friend, share it with your spiritual friend. You probably have at least one. And ratings and reviews and all that stuff, please. They really help. So yeah, a lot in store for this season. We're really excited. Feels big, for lack of a better word. But yeah. Okay. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.